Hello, everyone. I'm Beth Orr,
And I'm Bridget Burns.
and welcome to Quick Moments and Passionate Pursuits The Unfolding, where intuitively guided conversations are followed with feral faith, enthusiasm, and joy, bringing new perspectives, inspiration, and insights along the way. And today, we're going to be talking about a topic that I've heard so many of us talk about, but in a new way. Have you guys ever had a moment of deja vu? Where you're like, oh man, this moment feels like it's happened before. What Bridget and I were talking about the other day is that what if we're looking in the wrong direction? Deja vu suggests that something's happened to us in our past. So we're looking back and we're like, something's happening again. But what if deja vu was actually something that was coming from our future? It's something that is almost more akin to a premonition than it is to something that's already happened. So we would like to introduce this topic, or at least we've never heard of um, a flash forward instead of a flashback. And that's what we're thinking more about these moments in our time where something feels like we remember it.
Yeah, so back in my previous life as an educator, I taught English and French. And déjà vu is a French term that means already seen. So it comes from the verb voir, which means to see, and déjà meaning already. So what I was really feeling and thinking about this concept was that déjà vu, already seen, suggests that we have pre-seen the moment in which we are living, and now we are living it. So it doesn't necessarily suggest to me that we're living a moment we've already lived, but that we are living a moment that we saw before it occurred. So that is the idea that this is a flash forward. And we know something as a flash forward, and we have this realization when in the moment we're experiencing it, we remember having seen it before. Now, some people get deja vu in dreams, like they see something in a dream and then they live it. Some people get deja vu and it only occurs in that moment, and they just have this sense or this feeling or clairsentience, this feeling that's really clear to them that this thing that they just lived, they've seen it, they knew about it beforehand, like it was foreshadowed. um, so I really wanted to dig into this concept of flashbacks, flash forwards, deja vu, and then knit them into this running hypothesis that I have about what time really is and how it is that we experience it on a human level and then also on a soul or collective level as well.
Why don't you go into that?
Yeah, so the hypothesis I have is that the future is really a subconscious soul level memory. So this works on the theory that time is not linear and that we only experience time in a linear fashion when we're embodied in this human form, in this current reality. That when we are outside this human form, so in between incarnations or in this like spirit realm, heaven, whatever you want to call it, that time is not linear and we can move freely and experience time in whatever way we want to. We can speed it up, slow it down, move ahead, move backwards. It's something that we can work with, not on that linear plane. So what I feel then is that in this human form, that we still have access to the future as this soul level memory. And then when we have experienced it in a linear plane, that what we have is the past is now a collective memory. So it's this soul level memory that's been released into this linear time space. And now we can experience it on a collective level. Like if I were to say the pandemic or 9/11 or World War II. These are all things that are now collective memory. They've been released from that soul level subconscious memory because they are past. And that both the future, this subconscious soul level memory, and the past, this collective memory, I feel like they are still cellularly marked. Like we carry them somewhere within this physical body, whether it be on a DNA level, whether it's somewhere in our brain somewhere. And that I believe this because I feel that all intangibles, so like love, for example, is intangible, but it lights up in certain areas of our brain. It causes physical things to happen within us. It changes our body chemistry. It has real tangible anchor points in this human frame.
Right.
I feel like the same thing has to be true for the intangible of the future or this subconscious soul level memory. And I feel that somewhere, both that future, whether they're in this incarnation in this lifetime, or that past, whether it's our past from this incarnation or previous incarnations, have to be marked somewhere and have to have a tangible anchor point somewhere in this physical reality. So I know that that's a lot that we're going to digest and talk through.
That is a lot. I was like, oh my
Brain
gosh,
dump.
you just released that in the first 5 minutes. Okay. Hang on, people.
If you're still listening.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So my hypothesis, and here's the beauty of this for everybody out there listening. I would love if your frame of reference was like, oh, but how do you fit this into it? The point of our discussion is to further us and move us forward. And so we're never saying that something is 100% or 100% for something's happening. What we're saying is this is our hypothesis, meaning that given everything that we know up to this point, this is a good working guess. Let's move it forward. So
Yeah.
one of the things that we know, given what you said, you were saying that you believe that it's embodied in us somewhere, right? This future. One of the things that's really interesting, and I can't remember the study that this comes from, but I remember seeing this and being geeked out. When we have memories in our brain, they flash at certain points, but we know that on average, people say that we use about 10 to 11% of our brain. And that's like, even smart people that have higher intelligences or IQs, right? It's only like getting them up to like 11%, right? Instead of 10%. So there's this large amount of our brain that is not being used. That's so strange to me. It's like we don't make cars and say, well, 90% of it's not necessary. Let's just throw a whole bunch of filler in there, right? Actually, we need everything that's in it. So when we create things, we create them with necessity. So the fact that we have 90% of us not used in our brains doesn't tell me that it's not used. It tells me we don't know how it's used yet. So a couple of hypotheses that I have is that since it's 10%, that leaves 90% left. We know that we can impact up to 9 generations within our DNA previous to us, which also tells me that we can impact 9 generations to the future of us. It's almost like either side of our life, we can affect 9 generations. And so knowing this, I'm wondering if these are compartmentalized within this brain, that this organism somehow has access to like a certain percentage of our past. And what I do know is that sometimes certain memories, they've actually witnessed this on brain scans, that parts of the brain that haven't traditionally lit up, light up in certain memories. And what I'm wondering is if those memories are actually flashbacks or flash forwards to past lifetimes or future lifetimes that we don't have access to yet, but we're still an organism that is operating based upon that version of us or those people in our bloodlines affecting us in our life now.
Yeah, Bobby's barking. I'm only going to talk for a second because of this. Hey, come here. But I wanted to jump on. I wanted to jump on this idea. Let me just grab him.
Okay.
Okay. I wanted to jump on this idea of memories and the different areas that they're stored. And I'm pulling up some research on this. But we had talked about this briefly about the idea that would there be a way to test this? Like, I know that I have had experiences that don't make logical sense given the life that I've lived. So, for example, an affinity for something that I've never experienced before, but I just naturally am drawn towards it. Right. Or on the flip side, a phobia of something that really doesn't make sense. Like, why is it that ever since I was a child, I had this unbearable phobia of heights? Like, had no experience with that being dangerous at all. But whenever I would experience heights, I would, like, my body would shut down. It was like some subconscious memory was telling my body, this is unsafe, would make my legs stop working. My head would go into, like, it would be spinning. And I would just go into like self-preservation mode. And this was from such a young age that didn't make sense. And I wonder if we were to study the brain when this happens, if that wouldn't be lighting up certain areas that we may be able to connect to perhaps previous incarnations or past lifetimes, where that was a true experience that we had that would signal these things, and that we're remembering it at the cellular level, but not at a conscious memory level.
Okay, this is taking us in a direction I didn't see coming. But, I think flash forward also talks about, so it actually is germane, it talks about evolution. It talks about us evolving. So if it's a future version of us or our species, then it's an evolving version. So what I'm wondering is, what if, okay, when we evolve, if we need a new part of us, it doesn't just show up and then it's fully functional. It actually evolves over a long period of time. So presumably our ancestors, so many, centuries back, may not have had the same number of chambers that we have in our brains, and they're not structurally the same way. So what I'm wondering is if somehow our species is evolving in our brain in a way that doesn't make sense to us yet, but it's not activated yet. And there will come a time to where our brain is actually made and ready for this way that we are evolving, but we can't just evolve like this. So we're creating. So what if this 90%, we're actually like, we are merging with computers. We are doing something. We're preparing ourselves for this. And when our brains are structured in a way that we can actually go online, we go online. It's almost like this collective consciousness.
Okay, that's weird.
What?
As you were writing this, okay,
as I was writing this?
As I was writing this, as you are talking about these structures, I'm writing. So before you said the sentence you just said, I'm writing. Structures must be present before they're online. And I'm writing online at the same time that you said that. Yeah. I had written it out as you were saying it. So what I was thinking, and I think this demonstrates the direction that we're headed, what I was thinking was we're constantly evolving. Species are constantly evolving. And the infrastructure has to be built out before we can use it. Just in the same way as above, so below, just the same way that a society that's moving towards this new type of transportation, for example, would have to build out the structures to make that transportation possible. Like we can't have high-speed rail on these old railways that are meant for freight trains. It's totally different structure, but we have to build the structure for the high-speed rail before we can bring it online.
Yeah.
We have to build a brain that is capable of telepathic real-time communication before it can be fully brought online.
Right.
And I was just going to say, so the example I was going to use that I was thinking of as you're speaking and I'm writing the same thing at the same time was that I feel like as a collective, we're headed for this higher telepathic communication. And we're going to need a brain that can act as a receiver and a transmitter for that kind of communication. And as I'm thinking that this is the direction we're headed, you say something and I'm writing it at the same time, which is an example of my brain is short.
It's an example of what we're talking about, right?
Right.
Much like in the episode where the light fell, right?
Yeah.
This is also a couple of things. Number one, it's also an example of the web and how when you have people in your web that you begin to have things happen and come to us simultaneously, right? Another thing that it also brings to mind is if this were true, and this was something that we were doing as a species, that we were from a future us perspective, back doing this and evolving in a way that it unfolds, right?
Yep.
If we were doing that, we would also be curious about putting people here that are testing that more extensively. So for example, twins have that happen all the time where they know that each other is thinking something or experiencing something and they'll communicate that. So that is actually part of our species that is like almost like testing this concept out ahead of time. Can we do this? Yes, actually we can. Because our DNA is such that it allows for that to happen. So we're testing all these different ways, that it can actually unfold and occur. We have that happen with parents, with kids. Something bad happens or something's going on, or a parent will be like, ooh, something's off. They don't know what it is, but they know something's going on. Or there's been times before where I'm like, oh, my mom's getting ready to call, and my mom will call. I'm like, what's that? I mean, that's a flash forward. I knew something was going to happen before it happened. I'm not the only one who does that. I know people that have had that happen before. So what is that? That's a connection. It's a connection that's already there. That is communication. Somebody is on the other side of the phone picking it up. And it's just like when we were talking about Mel Robbins and Kim Russo's episode a couple times before. She talks about going up to the order something at fast food, and whenever you order it, it's waiting for you, but you haven't seen that person or interacted with that person. It's just through the frequencies. It's not even that person talking to you directly. It's through frequencies. It's like sound does something and then sound picks it up, and then there's some sort of communication and somehow it's happened. Well, that's what's happening in our brain. Our brain has the same sort of capacity, except for greater. We know our brain has greater capacities than a drive-through system. We say even the biggest supercomputers, our brains are faster and have more capacity. So of course, this is all happening at all times. And this is what we've talked about before. Like sensing something. That's all that is. We're just cued into the frequencies, right? And this is on the same vein as this collective consciousness that we're talking about, but it could be even linked to the structure of our brain and why it is, you know, the way that it is for something greater in the future that will come online.
Yeah. You used examples that make me think that the way that we started to evolve this was through a physical genetic link. So twins, identical twins, identical genetically. Parents and children share a great portion of their genetics.
Right.
But we're headed in a direction where we're getting farther and farther away from a genetic link. Like, so as odd as this sounds, like I've even experienced this happening with this is going to sound real out there, but I'm going to put it out there, with animals, with plants. Big genetic gap happening. But I'll have a sense sometimes of, oh, this is off, or oh, what I'm picking up from this entity or this organism is this really positive, like high vibration that I can feel, that I'm sensing. And it's not necessarily so much a thought, like a thought transfer as we had occur, but with them, it's a feeling, a vibrational transfer, which is also the same thing, because thoughts are vibration. They're a frequency.
My mind's blown. It's just like, seriously, like I do think that there's something to this connection that we're cultivating, and that we're starting to see that just like in some skill sets, that some people have the skill set that's a little bit more refined than others in art, in being an orator, whatever it is. We all have these different skill sets, and there is something to this like vibration across species and within our own that is starting to be more recognized and known. And definitely there's just something to this. And I'm wondering if, as we were talking, I'm thinking about like maybe sometimes we get overwhelmed because whereas in the past, like think about it, it was only the early 80s when computers came out. So within my lifetime, computers came out, and it substantially increased our capacity to do more. And that's also, we're starting to learn that we're taking in more. And so I'm wondering if it's almost like a catalyst, like you mentioned, like a catalyst. I'm wondering if it's almost like a catalyst. It's almost like it's the thing that starts to ramp up the power in this brain and in this system. And it's like, get ready, get ready. Like, it's almost like it's starting to churn. It's like in the movie Contact, when they're in this and they have this round sphere in her, and it has to go like this, and it starts to turn, and it goes really, really slow at first, really, really slow, the rotation. And then finally it goes faster and faster and faster and faster and faster till there's so much momentum that it creates a wormhole, right? That she drops through. But to everybody that's watching, it looks like it was a failure, and they don't know that she's been through a wormhole and back. There's something in this that's bringing up that image to me, but it's almost like our brains are like that, but it's starting something, this whole frequency with computers, and something energetically is happening, to get us kind of moving beyond in our species. It's awakening something.
I think that connects really nicely with the next idea that I wanted to pull into the discussion, which is this concept that what our linear future holds. So as we are bound in this time space area, what our linear future holds is a plenum of potentiality. And what that means is that every possible potential is played out somewhere. So what we are going to experience is just one. At any given time, we are only on track to experience one of those potential futures. But the possibility of all futures must be kept open. It has to be, because the universe is all about balance. So if it's true that everything that can happen will happen somewhere in some way, and what we want to experience, if you want to experience this, and I'm assuming that if you are listening to our specific podcast, and you do, if what we want to experience is the highest possible good, the highest timeline for ourselves, then how do we draw that potential, that future, that timeline into our current reality? Like, how do we attract it magnetically and filter out the ones that we'd prefer not to experience at this point?
My answer is our vibration. Like, if you're thinking about that, I'm always thinking that it's all about vibration. And I think you even talk about, isn't there like a God consciousness, like a certain number for that? Isn't that like 500 hertz, which is love, is God
Good
consciousness?
question.
Yeah, I'm going to go with that while you're looking it up. And you actually had it in a note that you had recently. But there is when we think about
963, the solfeggio frequency of the God frequency is 963 hertz.
Okay. So 500 is love.
Yep.
540 is joy. 600 is peace. 700 is enlightenment. Now we know that we've said the scale is up to 1,000. Why? But we're like, why? And well, I guess it's because we need to recognize that there's more than even beyond enlightenment. But if now we know that 963, and which, by the way, hertz is an actual frequency, so this isn't like speculation. This is actually scientifically been able to be measured, right? So knowing that 963 is that level, then to me, I'm always looking to, if I'm going to get my highest path, if I'm going to meet my highest potential, then I'm always trying to be aware of how do I raise my vibration. Because if I'm above 500, then I'm only attracting love or greater. And we know that love is what God asks of us. So he doesn't even expect us to be on 963. Literally, it's like love your neighbor. That's a 500 frequency, right? He's allowing, or they're allowing for that humanity to be in there. But I'm always trying to be at my highest frequency, because I know that means that when I am at my base frequency at love, then I am only attracting situations outside of me that are at that frequency or above. So anything that is not that level, sometimes I'll be like, oh, that didn't work out, or this didn't happen. It's because if I'm at a frequency that does not match with the frequency around me, I cannot maintain that, because it's not my resonance. I either have to lower my resonance to stay in tune with that frequency, or I have to keep with my resonance and wait for things to fill in as things fall back to keep attracting at that resonance. So I'm always, from my highest potential, going to try to get to the highest resonance in my body, mind, and spirit, because it's going to take all of those ideally together to be able to attract at a higher level consistently.
Yeah. All right. As you were talking about this, I'm going to try not to cough because I just had my drink go down the wrong way.
Okay.
As you're talking about this, I just got this ping of, oh my gosh, this explains so much that has literally and figuratively shaken out in my life over the past few years. So as our frequency grows and gets higher and higher, and as we are able to maintain that higher frequency on a more regular basis, naturally what we're going to see happen is those things that do not resonate to that frequency are going to fall away. So an example of this, if you've ever been in a sound healing, you know that there are instruments that resonate to certain given frequencies. And if you were to take a quartz singing bowl, say it's 760 hertz, and you resonate that, you play it, you sound it, anything that's that is tuned to that same frequency within that area where those sound waves can get to will also play, even though you didn't touch it, because the vibration, the wavelength of that sonic vibration is going to hit those, and they're already tuned to it. So what happens with what in the world just happened? How did that happen? I won't touch anything.
Oh my God. Are you on the balloon frequency? What the heck? That was the strangest thing I've ever seen. For those of you on Spotify that are not watching the video cast on YouTube, I would
Go to
head over
YouTube.
there and watch this. Literally, she just had balloons come up when she said that across the screen. That was spectacular.
Oh, God.
Congratulations, Bridget. You have won
You've
the
made
thought
it.
of the day.
Oh my gosh. What I was going to say was that we will draw people and scenarios to us that resonate to that frequency. Apparently my frequency is joyful right now.
Yeah.
Like birthday party joyful.
Yeah.
But also what happens, and I don't want people to be frightened by this. I want them to be aware so that when it happens, they have the tools to process through it. And when your frequency gets to this sustained level, things that don't resonate to that aren't going to be able to stay in your orbit. They're naturally just going to fall away. And the good news is that those things that are tuned to that higher frequency are going to come in and fill those spaces naturally. So when you see literally things start crumbling and shaking out, recognize that that is a physical marker or a physical indicator of the work that you've been doing internally is now being externalized. Yeah. And that's a beautiful thing. Like, expect abundance, expect growth, expect the miraculous to happen. Yeah. Expect balloons to float up out of nowhere.
Well, and I have to tell you, number one, from a web perspective, because, we talk about the web a lot and how different themes come up. Right before we came on for recording this, I had 3 friends on Facebook that had birthdays, and I sent them balloons through Facebook. And I never do that. I never go happy birthday and send balloons, but I did. And so right before I came on here, I sent that to some people and then sent a private message to one of my friends and said happy birthday. So literally when it happened, I was like, this is a nod to the happy birthday and the web kind of thing happening. Like, and we keep saying how it gets closer in the exact timing. So literally this is just like over an hour difference, right? Like, it's borrow. Yeah.
We are exactly 1 month out from my birthday also.
Right. Oh yeah, that's true.
To the day.
Yeah. So,
I don't know. Just working hypotheses.
Right. It's a happy birthday, Bridget. No, but I I love that hypothesis, and I just love thinking about this topic of when you said it originally when we were talking about this instead of a flashback, a flash forward, and deja vu. To me, there's so many ways that this makes sense as we start to, as a society, understand that if time isn't linear, which we're for the most part, most people are like, yeah, we get that that's the case. We're at our infancy of understanding that when things seem important or memorable. We're at our infancy of understanding if it's something in our future or something in our past, understanding why it even like, why are we supposed to even pay attention? Like, why is it even coming up? Like, what we do know about like time travel, movies is that they tell us like, don't mess with it, but yet it feels opposite of what we have this opportunity to respond in a higher good that actually changes the trajectory of a lot of things. I don't even know if that's true anymore. Like, what if that's not the case? And if we're always moving towards a future that's for the highest good of all people, aren't we constantly making changes that allow for the highest good for all people? Instead of just allowing what we hope to happen. It's like bigger than just our individual lives, which is the myopic view of what these movies talk about. This is about a collective healing and coming together for the highest good.
Yeah, and one more thing that I just got pinged to as you were talking about that is the fact that as we're discussing this plenum of potentiality, and as we're discussing this idea of the flash forwards, recognize the fact that when we are focused on drawing in our highest good, that also plays by these universal laws. And one of those universal laws is that the universe will never interfere with an individual's autonomy or their free will. So if we want to draw in that highest future, highest good potential for ourselves, we have to intend it. We have to focus on it. It's not just going to happen. And when that intention could potentially interfere with someone else's highest good or free will, then the universe is going to balance that. So I think that it's really important to understand that free will always exists, and that just because we have this flash forward or this vision of something that could potentially occur doesn't necessarily mean that
Another good
that is set in
idea.
stone, that is set in stone.
Yeah.
What it means is that we're drawing in that potential at that given moment. So there's always time to pivot. There's always opportunity to be mindful and to change our intention. And I think that's really, really important. Like, just because I'm saying it's possible that we will have a flash forward and see something before it occurs, or recognize that we've seen the moment that we're living in, doesn't mean that that's ever written in stone. It always means that okay, now you're aware. Great, because you're aware, now you have the autonomy and the authority to speak to that future and draw in the highest good and avert the course that you may be on if it's not the highest for you.
What it sounds like you're describing is that when we have these moments that feel like deja vu, and we don't know if it's past or future, doesn't matter. It's just a moment that says, pay attention. And it's an invitation to look more closely at this pivotal moment in our lives. That's pivotal for some reason that's beyond our understanding. And if we focus on how do we take a course of action that is for the highest good of all involved, or for like, um honestly, sometimes we can't see how it's the highest good for all involved, right? So it's like, honestly, if we just take the highest vibration goodness for like maintaining that for ourselves, we have to believe that that is the highest vibration and good for everybody around us.
Yeah, and we can set out that specific intention,
Mm,
that this is what I wish to draw to myself, and also I am going to allow the universe to work with it in such a way that it benefits everyone involved for their
mm,
highest good as well.
mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's an important point too. That when we do ask for our angels or our spirit guides to be involved, it can be very intentionally for the highest good of all, not just for this incarnation, or
Mm,
our
yeah.
past and future incarnations, right? Or even
Yeah.
the many potential ones that we have going on. You know, it almost like takes prayer to this whole other level. Like, intention is not just like, sometimes I used to see, when I was a child, I used to see prayer as something that was very one thread. And now it's like I see prayer as like everywhere, like all these different threads all over the place. It's like it's for this whole, not just for me, but for everybody around me and this whole other higher good. It's so multidimensional. It's so beyond even what I understand, but I do know that I care about how my current incarnation affects the people, right?
Yeah, it's just part of the process of evolving and of having a greater understanding of how we are, like how we show up in the world as not just an individual, but on a collective basis as well.
Yeah.
That we're moving in that direction, that there's this greater interconnectedness, and we're becoming more aware of it. And one of my favorite things to say with any of this is, I'm evolving and growing and learning at such a rapid rate that I just want to do what I know is best with what I have, the information that I have today.
Yeah.
And then tomorrow, when I know better, I want to do better. And I
Right.
don't ever want to be that previous version of myself. I always want to be moving forward and growing and evolving, becoming more compassionate, more loving, more holistically minded. And when I'm presented new information, I want to internalize that and I want to grow because of it. I'm not someone who will stand really strongly on any given perspective, because I just feel that there's always more room for me to grow.
Yeah.
So I don't argue, but I will question. I
Right.
love questions.
Well, and I will put one caveat to what you just said, which is, I don't want to be the totality of any version that I've been in the past, but I wouldn't mind tapping into those previous versions of me on occasion. And that's where
Oh
we've
yes.
talked recently about, like, the inner child and the younger versions of you that do know how to play, those
Yep.
versions of you that do purely know how to do something that you've kind of let go of because of age, or, messaging, or more experience. There's versions that I wouldn't mind tapping into, but the totality of myself, there's not one version of me from the past that I would want to be in totality other than me now.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's like the snowball image, right? Like or a tree. I've said trees before. Like a tree isn't just its outer ring.
Right.
It's all of those inner rings built on top of it that makes up what it is now. Just
Right.
like I'm never going to go back to just being that version of myself without the current knowledge, but who I am now and the better understanding that that version of me brings is really incredibly powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Thank you for this discussion. I don't have anything else to add to it. I'm like, um that's not true. I do have one more thing. Just one more thing in going out. I think it's up to us, when we think about our future, to be really aware that when we have these moments, that we are being encouraged and invited to pay attention. that it where our biggest, we don't have to know how it's gonna change anything. But if we just stay in our emotional integrity to the vibration of what we have right now. So I was thinking earlier about, like, do we fear the future or do we anticipate it and get excited about it, right? And I think when we can trust our response as being genuinely from a compassionate lens, and we're anticipating it and we're not afraid. Fear is such a low level emotion that if we can just um, manage our expectation and know that it's good, really good, then that's the frequency that we want to be on in order to draw the highest future to ourselves and our loved ones and people around.
Yeah, I think if we can just imagine that a wiser, more compassionate, more loving version of ourselves exists in the future somewhere, and that they are complicit in helping us get through this experience, then we have this perspective. Even if you're not talking in terms of God or spirit guides or any of this, even if you're just talking from a self perspective, if your self is compassionate and wise, then of course you would want what was best for you right now.
Yeah.
Even if that involves, as a parent with children, even if that involves allowing a couple scraped knees along the way, but knowing that it's all for the higher good.
Yeah.
If we can just shift into that perspective sometimes,
Yeah.
I think that will be really beneficial.
Yeah. Beautiful.
All right. Special thanks to Asheville artist Melissa Moss for our cover art. You can learn more about Melissa at melissamossart.com. And thank you to Cloud Cult for our intro and outro music from their song, There's So Much Energy in Us. Learn more about Cloud Cult at cloudcult.com. And of course, a very deep, heartfelt thank you to our listeners, and to all of you, we wish you peace, love, and light.